Welcome back to a second chance. My name is Philip Jones, one half of your host at a second chance, kidney transplant recipient.
And my name is Tafaro Cook, two-time kidney transplant recipient and founder of Kidney Care Coaches, where we coach people with stage 3 to stage 5 kidney disease. If you or you know someone who has kidney disease challenges and needs to be coached, hit us up at kidneycarecoaches.com.
I said before we're gonna try to get interviews with more donors, and that's kind of for this year of 2023 is to get more conversation with donors and figure out how they got to being a donor. So today we have Brian Martindale here with us today. Brian, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Brian Martindale. I'm the executive director of Kidneys for Kids, a nonprofit organization based in Michigan, and I am also a living kidney donor. I donated to a young lady who I did not know in 2013. I had seen her news story in a newspaper article about 6 months before in September of 2012. And I had already tried to help a friend who was listed through a peer donation 2 years before. And after reading her story, which I found just by chance on the last day I was building a store for my clothing brand, I ran out of chewing gum. And that was the reason I would walk to this store to get a new pack of chewing gum. And lo and behold, on the counter was a newspaper with her picture. And like I say, after reading that story, I called 2 days later and verified I was her blood type. And 2 days after that, I contacted the University of Michigan Transplant Center and tested for her anonymously. And a couple weeks later, I was notified that I was a 1 in 100,000 match for her. I matched as if we were siblings, even though we never met. And we were introduced 2 times in between then and January 11th of 2013, the day she received my kidney. And we've both been doing well ever since. We just celebrated our 10-year kidney anniversary last Wednesday. And I've been a mentor now, a peer mentor for the University of Michigan Transplant Center for the last 7 years. And I founded this nonprofit, Kidneys for Kids, last year after embarking on the first part of which will be a 48-state, 50-city trip this year, in which I will be advocating in 50 TV interviews for different children who need kidney transplants. There you go.
That is awesome, man. That's wonderful. Brian, let me ask you a question. Just from you chewing the gum to taking the signing up to be her donor, how long was the whole process? What would you say from you to her?
I saw her story the last week of September, and then I called to test that following week. Like I say, there's usually 2 days of testing involved for a kidney donor. And within 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks after that, I was notified that I was a match and asked if I wanted to proceed from that point, which I indicated I would. And then they were not notified till a couple of weeks later, which just turned out to be the day before Thanksgiving of 2012. And Stacy, Jessica's mother, said that they screamed so loud when they heard the news that I should have heard them 4 blocks away where I live.
You probably felt their frequency because that's an awesome thing when it happens like that. It's pretty awesome.
I knew, from the beginning of reading that story, and I don't know, just knowing that I was the blood type to start with, I just had that feeling. And sure enough, I was. And it was funny. There was a benefit held in between them knowing and our actual surgeries. And they still didn't know I was the donor. And I attended that benefit. And I sold clothing from my clothing brand to benefit Jessica for her surgery and presented it to them that night, knowing I was the donor and they not knowing I was the donor. That was a little surreal.
Did you notify her that night that you were the donor, or you just kept it still secret?
No, I did not. What happened was I had a friend at the time who had worked for CNN as a reporter, and she knew me personally and knew I was going to become a kidney donor. She asked me if she could do filming for a documentary on kidney donation.
Okay.
And then she approached them separately and set up a meeting. And so that was the first time we met, was during the interview that she did for a little film called Transplant Stories. And then we met just for the second time when we rode together in a donated limousine down to our surgeries the night before.
That's awesome. I didn't know Michigan was having limousine service for transplant donors and recipients. That's pretty cool
Well,
right there.
a good friend of ours that owns several businesses here in town, he had held one of the benefits for Jessica. And so he insisted that we be driven down and as well as picked up and brought back after our surgeries in his limousine.
That is nice. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Let me ask you a question. How did you feel after when you woke up? What was your experience like? Yeah, let's take a deep dive in that.
Yeah, yeah, because I just went through this in the last few weeks with one of the people I met in Virginia last year on my trip. The in the family, the father actually became the son, who was 18 months old, became his donor on December 27th. So I took them through this whole process. Stephen had asked me about this, and when I woke up, um, my pain level initially, I knew something was going on. I had been done, my kidney had been taken laparoscopically. So I was split at the navel and then had two scopes inserted on my left side. So, yeah, of course, you wake up realizing you're in pain, but your mind doesn't kind of focus, for a few hours as you're coming through the anesthetic. But by the time I was able to focus, I actually realized I was getting too much pain medication.
Mm,
I've never done well with any kind of opiates or anything, like that. So they were giving me morphine, a light dose of morphine, and it was too much. And I thought I was going to have an upset stomach. And of course, the last thing you would want to do after the surgery was, you know, have an upset
yeah,
stomach.
yeah.
So I had them take out my pain meds within hours of being fully awake, and I was just on a pain pill after that, a very light pain pill. So my pain was controlled very well. I was up. That was Friday evening when I became lucid. By Saturday morning, I was up and walking.
Mm,
And all day Saturday, I walked on and off. In fact, the CBS TV station here that had followed our story from the beginning up until even now, they just interviewed us for a 10-year anniversary. Um, David interviewed me that Saturday night at 11 o'clock while I was walking the halls on my phone. So once you get up and you're active and you move, the pain subsides more and more. And I actually stayed. I could have gone home on Sunday. They took me over to see Jessica on Sunday, and I ended up staying till Monday morning. And by the time I went home, I was very comfortable riding in the limousine life back home. And after that, it was just, like to say, a very minimal dose of acetaminophen each day for a couple weeks. That was it as far as my pain. I know some people have different experiences, but in general, with all the advances, and all the history of kidney transplant, our pain levels as donors is controlled very, very well.
right, right. What was Jessica's original disease, her cause for
Um,
kidney failure?
she had been born with one kidney that was undersized and didn't, very minimal function. And I cannot pinpoint the disease that killed off her kidney function. She just had the first signs when she was 9 years old. She just started to have backaches. And that was by the time that she went in, like most people who have kidney disease, 70% of the people who have kidney disease don't know it. She was one of those. And by the time she was checked for the backaches, that's when she found out she was in kidney failure by then. She was already in end stage failure. She wasn't to the point of needing dialysis yet,
Mm.
but they told her if she wouldn't have gotten my kidney within a couple months, she would have been put on dialysis.
So, other words, she just had like a deformity in her kidney, what you would say, something like that from birth, and no
Yes.
no original disease. That's really, honestly, that's kind of the best way to because therefore you don't have to have anything like any like glomerulus that come back and attack the kidney or anything like that. So that's a good situation right there.
Right.
That's really, really good. That's good to hear. And is she, how old is she? And is she back to like doing everything she wants to do and things like
Oh
that?
yeah. Yeah. Jessica is 20 years old now.
Yeah.
She is at Eastern Michigan University as we speak today. And it's kind of surreal when we look at things this way. It's like when I give speeches about becoming a living kidney donor, I tell people it's like living two lives.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to become as close as family to Jessica. She's like a daughter to my wife and I. And to know part of me today is at Eastern Michigan University studying to be a neurologist. And the other part of me is sitting here talking to you. No, she's doing perfectly well, hasn't had any sign of rejection. Like I say, she's studying. She works after school. That's why she cannot participate in this interview today. She's a caregiver for an adult in Ypsilanti, where she goes to Eastern Michigan, and she's also serves on the board of directors. She's our vice president for Kidneys for Kids, and
Awesome.
she actively helps as much as she can as far as advocating for children as well as adults.
That's wonderful, man. That's wonderful. Go ahead, Phil.
You talked about your 10th anniversary, which was last Wednesday.
Mhm.
How surreal does that feel to you to say, 10 years ago I saved a young lady's life that at that time didn't even know lived 4 blocks away from me?
Yeah. Well, very real. I mean, very surreal. It did. It really, I think, hit me because 10 years is a monumental stage for any kidney donor and recipient. To reach your 10-year point. The average living kidney functions on the average for 15 to 20 years, and of course, some have functioned for up to 50 years now. We know of. But just to know that, I was sitting in a limousine next to this very tiny, very pale 10-year-old girl. And it seems like yesterday, and carrying on. And one thing I remembered too, and I never realized until I had met her, that she had had a speech impediment, which was caused from her kidney disease. And I didn't know at the time, kidney disease can cause many different afflictions, as we know now. And still seeing her as that little girl with that little lisp in her voice, so sweet, so tiny and so white. And now seeing her today, she's as tall as me, 5'10". She is a young lady. And every time I see her and we see each other personally, I get a gift. I feel like I get a gift every time I see her. I feel like I'm cheating sometimes because I gave her life one time, but every time I see her today, it's like I feel a spark of new life inside of me at 61.
Awesome,
I think the
let's
donor side is hold on, let me say this first. I think the donor side is so amazing because of that. My donor loves seeing me because she loves seeing me thrive and things like that because of the same thing you're saying. I think we're givers as just human beings, and when you see somebody um, go on and do great things with what you gave them, it's a
Yeah.
really, really good feeling. I just want to make that statement. Go ahead, Phil. I apologize for saying that.
let's dive into that first meeting between you and Jessica. Like, how did that conversation go? How did that introduction go at that time between yourself and Jessica?
In our first meeting,
Yes.
yeah. Well, that was the night that our friend from CNN that I talked about held the interview with Jessica and her mother, and I was actually off stage, and it was going to be up to them whether we met or not. And so we were introduced on camera. So it was very surreal walking around the corner. I already knew who I was going to see. When Jessica's mom saw me, the first thing she said was, "I thought it was you." And we all hugged. And yeah, it was pretty emotional and surreal to start with, and just to know that. Um, in a short period of time, that this little girl sitting next to me was going to get part of me, and I was still grasping, once we went through all this, what was going to happen and how we were both going to feel like, and what we were going to be like afterwards. It was all new to me too. So, um, yeah, it just, like no other moment in my lifetime, put it that way, has compared to that meeting, as well as the feeling of that Sunday, the 2 days after I donated. I was wheeled over because the Children's Hospital at the University of Michigan is connected by a bridge to the transplant center where adults are. And compared to that day, I was wheeled over there. As soon as I come into the room, I saw a new girl from the person I wrote down with 48 hours before. She was full of life, full of color. She looked like a totally different person. So,
Wow, yeah, I love those special moments. So let's talk about how you decided to become a peer mentor. Are you a peer mentor in adults transplant center or at Mott's?
I'm actually a peer mentor to adults, but I've been
Okay,
asked by families to be a mentor, now that I'm involved with a lot of different children. So I've mentored to both now. But I mean,
okay,
either way, I'm mentoring to an adult, I should say, because the child's kidney is coming from an adult donor, you know.
right, right.
But
So
most
how
of the
did
time I'm
you?
mentoring adult to an adult.
Right, right. So how did you come to that original conclusion that hey, I'm going to touch the adult side as well? Because I know I talked to certain people and they say, my original help was the child, so I'm gonna stay on the pediatric side. Like, how do you make that decision to help adults as opposed to going to the pediatric side of things?
Well, yeah. Well, I'm a person that can't say no as far as that goes. Um, right now, I'm going to be in a podcast interview on Friday for a local adult who I actually met this summer because I took that trip for children. I I was in a car show in between
Hmm.
uh, in between my trips to Mississippi and to Virginia because I had an electric vehicle that was given to me by Chevrolet to do this trip. And the day of the car show, the people that won the car show were right across from me. And they came over and introduced themselves, and they said, "We like your Kidneys for Kids organization, everything it talks about on your car. And we're about to go right now to a benefit for a woman who needs a kidney transplant." And immediately I said, "Okay, where are we going?" And that was in October of last year. And so that lady I've been advocating for ever since. And we're going to be on a podcast, like I say, this Friday to try to help her find a kidney. Um, I'm also helping a person on our board of directors. We were on TV back in March. She needs her second kidney transplant. And I was able to secure a CBS local story for her, which brought forward people that have tested for her. She just got listed in the last couple of weeks, and she's hoping to hear a call now. She knows that people did come forward and test for her because of that story. So I constantly have now, especially after I took that trip, both adults and children approaching me, asking, is there any way you could help get the word out? You have a great network, and you have a way getting involved in stories where people find kidneys. Just happened that way. I've been in two other stories for friends in the last 3 years where both of them received kidneys also. Um, so yeah, if somebody calls me to say, "Hey, uh, I'm struggling here. I've tried everything to find a kidney donor. I've been on the list, for umpteen years or whatever," and I'm just like, "Okay, let's do this. Let's start by getting your social media page put together. Let's get a video put together for you. Let's get your name out there, and let's do whatever we can to bring light to your story." So doesn't matter if you're an adult or a child. Just like this trip this year, I'll have 50 TV interviews scheduled for families with a child in a kidney transplant, in 48 states. But besides that, I'm also scheduling interviews for groups of adults in each town I go to show the importance that there are, 1,100 children over here that need a kidney. There's another almost 10,000 on dialysis, but there are 96,000 other adults waiting today that need a kidney that are listed. And we can't ignore that fact. I can't, even if I have an organization that's geared towards children. So I will always continue to advocate for both adults and children the rest of my life.
Wow. Big heart. Mr. Cook?
Yeah, is this like and so right after you becoming a donor is when you started Kids for Kidneys, correct?
Kidneys for Kids. Yep.
I'm sorry.
Oh no,
Kidneys
I didn't start it after that. No, I'm sorry. It started last year. I founded it in May of 2022 when I came up with the premise of taking this 48-state trip.
Okay.
So, and I came up with the name Kidneys for Kids because I was going out to just, advocate for children. Like I say, it ended up being a shorter preliminary trip last year, but this year I've already got sponsorship from General Mills as well as Nestle. So it
Wow.
looks like, and we've got a ride. This year it looks like from Kia instead of a Chevrolet.
All right.
So yeah, between May and August, it'll happen in phases, but I'll make all 48 states, 50 cities, and just like it says on the shirt that I'm wearing, my goal is to find 100 kidneys for 100 children.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Are you going to be in Tampa, Florida?
I certainly am.
Well, you need to get in touch with me so I can see what I can do to support Kidney Care Coaches. So we'll support you guys in any way.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping in Tampa, besides having, like I said, an interview, because that is a city where I had one of the mothers that contacted me is in Tampa. So that's why I know I'm going for that particular child. But we'll set up there a group interview with adults. And I'd love to have you help me carry that on.
For
That would be
sure, I will,
awesome.
man. Definitely.
So, and same thing when I get out your way, Philip.
Oh yeah,
I'm going to
you
be
got
in
my
the Los
support.
Angeles area.
Oh yeah, most definitely. You definitely got our support for sure. We're gonna take a commercial real quick, and then Mr. Cook will start us off back with questions. Welcome back to a chance.
Okay, so we're back.
First question. Yep.
Okay, yeah. So Brian, what I wanted to ask you was, when you first hear about these kids, like what's the process when you first hear about a kid that needs a transplant, and you get this kid? Let's take a deep dive into what's your process when you first hear this kid that needs a transplant, and then what's the process going through?
Okay. Well, when I'm contacted by a parent, I just kind of jump into action. First of all, I find out, where they are, what transplant center that they're using, and then I ask for a story about what the child has gone through, what kind of medical situation they are in presently. Are they on the transplant list? If they're not, when will they be on the transplant list? To find out how we can help as far as if the child's eligible for a kidney transplant, um, then we're going to do what I said, start with putting together some social media for them to get their stories heard. Um, put out the word on all of our networks, and then find out, especially like the one we're going to do this Friday for a little girl in Virginia who's 15 months old, that just got listed Monday, and because of her complications, she needs a kidney immediately. So then I usually find out if I can make contact with their local media and set up a news story. I just go for broke right from the start as far as getting their stories seen and heard. And to look at numbers, you really have to reach about 50,000 people to find one living kidney donor. Because on the average, like I say, last year, there were about 25,000 kidney donations in the United States, but only 6,500 of those came from living donors. The rest came from non-living donors.
Mhm.
So to reach its living donor successfully, whether it be for a child or an adult, I have to reach about 50,000 people, and that's why I shoot immediately. If a parent comes to me with a child who needs a kidney now, that let's go for TV, radio, media, newspaper. Let's get their story heard, because it'll also bring attention to other children's stories. If we have one out there, somebody that knows somebody with a child, they may think, well, maybe I can't help that child, but maybe I can help this child who I do know. So
Right.
that's my process. Just and then if I'm needed to, I'm also an intermediary. As far as talking to hospitals, as far as no personal medical questions because of HEPA laws, but anything I can do to guide the family with if they aren't familiar, as some are, with what they need to know about their child, what kind of questions they need to be asking their physicians, their nephrologists, and things like that. Just try to point them in the right direction.
Right. That's always a good thing to do. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Go ahead, Phil. I don't have any more questions.
So I want to know what was going through your mind exactly when you decided to come up with this concept of uh 48 states, 50 cities, and to give or try to advocate for kids to get a kidney. What was that? How did that concept come about?
Well, it came about after the last interview I spoke of, which happened last March, for my friend Tracy Lebrecht, who is our one of the board of directors members now, um, and arranging a TV interview for her to find her second kidney donor, and seeing the response, and then I thought about it. I had done this. That was the fourth time I had done a story like that over a 3-year period. Participated in one for somebody that needed a kidney. And I thought, well, if I can get this kind of response for somebody in a single small market TV interview, why couldn't I do something like this nationally and bring attention nationally to people who need a kidney transplant? And as I thought more about it, I thought I centered on children because I ended up donating to a girl who was 10 years old at the time. And I thought, well, I'd like this. Nobody wants to see a child, let alone an adult sick, but nobody, even an adult with kidney disease, doesn't want to see a child next to them,
Right.
in any kind of burden being sick. So that's when I focused on kids and tossing around names. I was looking for kidneys for children, kidneys for kids, and that's where the name came up. And I started out, my plan was last year, I came up with a plan in May to actually visit transplant centers and National Kidney Foundation offices. I didn't have it in my mind that I would do personal interviews with families of children who needed kidney transplants until after um, the first couple interviews I did in Mississippi. I visited the Mississippi Kidney Foundation in the first part of my trip. And after the first NBC and CBS interviews aired, then I started to have mothers from different kidney groups contact and say, would you consider, are you going to take this trip that you're talking about? Do you happen to be coming to my state? And if you are, would you advocate for my child? So there you go. Then I knew it had to be more than just a little trip, you know, um, and it didn't have to be just me talking to physicians and hospitals about their kidney program or the National Kidney Foundation about what they do for children. You know, people needed to see these situations of what these children are going through, and having parents explain, when they take them in a bedroom, like when I was in Virginia, with little Cooper Fab, the one that just got his kidney on December 27th, you know, from birth on to 18 months when he got his kidney last month, he was on dialysis every day. He was in kidney failure from day one. One of the shots that the TV station took was of the bedroom of all of the boxes of things he needed to get through 1 week of dialysis and then his medications. And that really is impactful when people see that. They can't fathom what somebody, you've gone through dialysis, and transplant and everything. They can't fathom what a person goes through or the scale of it until they see these things. It's a lot of it is visual, just like with anything. Just like when you see a St. Jude's commercial, it's visual
Yep.
for a
Yeah.
child.
It's true.
So I thought, I've got to do this in a personal manner. I got to do it with respect, but I'm going to do it for people that actually want me there for their child. And any place, if there isn't a city or state where I don't want there to be a child that needs a kidney in every state. And if there isn't, then let's move on and let's help adults. And let's do that simultaneously too. Let's help adults while we help children. And hopefully in doing 48 to 50 TV interviews, we make the living kidney donation this summer trend on social media. If we can't do that with that much media, I don't know what will. That's my goal.
Right. Right.
Let's make it a trend this year for adults and children.
So what's your time frame you're looking at from start date to finish date for this tour?
Okay. I'm planning on starting the third week of May, and then I'll be going all the way until about the second week of August. We'll start with the eastern states, head down the eastern seaboard, kind of zig back and forth, up and down, so we make it over to the west coast in July and August. And I'm doing that. I'm funding it with a a fundraiser project through our nonprofit, and through getting sponsors. Like I say, I do have Ice Mountain Spring Water on board now, and General Mills, and talking to anybody that listens. So,
That's
and people
awesome.
can find out more if they'd like to get involved. Just go to kfork.org. And anybody can join in there with a tax deductible donation and read all about the trip and look at the TV links that I created in the last year.
Man, that's amazing.
Thank you.
So let me ask you this one last question. One of the
Sure.
last questions. Um, you seem pretty knowledgeable when it comes to media production. Do you have a background in it? Is that what you went to school for? Is that like a trait you just picked up kind of in your spare
Um,
time?
I own the clothing brand Karma Inc. Apparel, which is online for since 2009. And it's because of that clothing brand that I became a kidney donor. actually. I told you I was building a store when I read that newspaper, and that was a store for my clothing brand. And when I first came up with my first few designs in 2009, my clothing brand is all about unity, equality, diversity. Every t-shirt and hoodie design promotes that, and then I give 20% of my sales to charity. So with that premise, the first people I approached to get some media were some musician friends. I'm good friends with Kenny Olson, who used to be Kid Rock's lead guitarist. So he was the first person that started wearing my first T-shirts on stage. And another band that followed them, uh, the band Tantric, their drummer wore one of my shirts on stage one night. I went backstage to meet them, and they introduced me to my late friend, unfortunately, who needed a kidney transplant. And that was how I became involved. Before that, and that was in 2010, I had never closely known a person with kidney disease who was on dialysis or anything. If I wouldn't have met that night, if I wouldn't have met Brent that night, got to be his friend, and I actually registered to be his paired donor in 2011. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him medically. He did end up getting a kidney in 2019, but by that time he'd been on dialysis for almost 13 years, and he passed on us in 2021. But it was because of all those things tying together that I became a kidney donor, and seeing Brett's plight to start with and what he went through with his kidney disease made me want to help somebody. So,
Wow. Yeah, so we definitely want to wish you luck on this tour that you're going on. We think it's great advocacy work. My last question for you is, what do you say to someone who's just kind of in the starting process of thinking of becoming a donor? What do you say to them to kind of put their mind at ease to make the right decision?
just of considering. Well, yeah, I tell them first of all, it is the one of the most extraordinary experiences that you will ever experience in your life. Seeing something, that came from your body, which is now in somebody else's body, giving them life. I assure them that the process, after over 50 years of kidney transplants, has been perfected to the point where your your danger of complication is very minimal. Your pain is very well controlled. Your typical recovery time is 2 to 4 weeks, maybe 6 weeks if you have a physical job like I had at the time I donated. I was working in construction besides owning my clothing brand. So for 6 weeks, I had a 10-pound lifting restriction. But like I said, the biggest thing is showing them showing them my experience. I like to show them this was Jessica 10 years ago. This is Jessica today. And what my donation to her has done for my life. I mean, all the blessings I received since then. That year I donated. My son and daughter-in-law were married and gave me my first grandchild. I've had a second healthy grandchild born since. I've had the marriage to my wife 6 years ago. So the blessings just keep coming. And I tell people that the more you give, the more you will receive. And it's so true in organ donation. You like I say, every day I see Jessica, I told you I receive a blessing. Just from seeing her going around with part of me and living the life that she wanted to live, free, no dialysis, no sickness. You know, going through college, just being a normal young lady. Saw her going through all those teenage years, attending her school plays and her school functions, and seeing just a happy girl. I couldn't get any more reward in life than that. And that's what I try to pass on to everybody that I talk to about becoming a donor.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we appreciate your time, Brian. You have an awesome and dynamic story. Definitely tell Jessica we're sorry we missed her, and we still love to have her on the show. At a point where she's not so busy with school. I understand I'm in school too, so I understand the busyness part of it.
I certainly will.
Next week we'll be back here on Wednesday with Simone Washington, and we're gonna go ahead and eat into Black History Month in February. So, again, thank you, Brian. We appreciate you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Cook, as
Brian. And don't
always.
forget to reach out when you're in Tampa to Kidney Care
I'm
Coaches.
reaching
I'll
out to
have,
both of you.
yes,
We're
yes,
gonna see both of you this year. Don't you
for
worry.
sure. For sure.
Definitely, looking forward to that. So again, real quick, Brian, drop your social handles, your website, so people know where to find you, and then send it to me after. Put it in the description also.
I certainly will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Till next week. See you.
Bye bye now. Take care. Peace.